every single one of our major customers and minor customers all shut their doors overnight.
You need the right people in the right place at the right time. And sometimes you have the right people in the right place, but at the wrong time.
I've got to keep going forward. I've got to keep looking for revenue streams. I've got to keep looking for growth, keep looking at new ways of doing things.
But, what's the culture like at the business? What do we stand for, the values?
I've got to tick that box on my personal development program I don't really want to be here.
Scaling up a business isn't easy. If it were, we wouldn't have less than 4% of businesses scaling beyond 10 employees or around £1 million turnover level, and less than 1% beyond 50 employees. But the contribution that we make as owner-managers to our economies is immense and should never be underestimated. Yet it can be a tough gig for all of us at times, and only other business owners truly understand the challenges that we face. And through ScaleUp Radio, we aim to help make things a little easier. We interview guests who have been where you are now and may have faced some of the challenges that you are facing. And they offer their thoughts and advice on what has worked for them, as well as what didn't. And we've also combined many of the lessons from these interviews and also through working with hundreds of owner managers over the last 10 years or so into a practical scale-up handbook that we've called the Entrepreneurial Scale-Up System, or ESUS. And it's for owner managers like you and me as we navigate our own scale-up journey. And you can order a copy through your favourite online book retailer or by going to all the W's, esusgroup.co.uk, www.esusgroup.co.uk. On this week's episode of ScaleUp Radio, we want to give you a chance to listen to some of the great content from the back catalogue of the podcast. Back in August of 2019, I spoke to Ian Priest from the Independent Banking Consultancy. It was a fascinating conversation, so we thought we'd give you a chance to listen to it again. And Ian has got incredible banking experience through his many years in the industry. And it was great to hear about that transition from working for a big company to working for a franchise. And in this episode, we'll cover how to make the decision between a franchise and working as a sole trader, the way to utilise power of the group of a franchise, which you might not have as a one-man business. If you've built up a business as part of a franchise, is there anything that you can sell on at some point? And what goes into the decision as to whether or not you're going to take on any employees? And this is a fascinating look at what it means to have your own identity as part of a franchise, which Ian has carved out for himself really well. It's worth a listen if you've ever thought about buying into a franchise yourself or creating one for others potentially to buy into.
Ian, welcome to ScaleUp Radio. So I'm here with Ian Priest of Independent Banking Consultants. So Ian, tell me, what does Independent Banking Consultants do? It's a bit of a mouthful.
It is.
So I've just proved.
You get your teeth back in. Yeah. Well, thanks, Kevin. Thanks for inviting me on. Independent Banking Consultants as a business has been going since 2000. It's a franchise. I joined them in 2011. We are essentially commercial finance brokers, but with a bit of a difference. Everybody at IBC, even the support staff, are all ex-bankers with a lot of years of experience. Unfortunately, commercial broking is still largely an unregulated activity. So although I'm authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority, they only provide protection for sole traders and small partnerships. Limited companies are left to their own devices, shall we say.
All right.
There's very little protection for limited companies out there. Which is bonkers when you consider that most of the limited companies are actually little more than sole traders anyway.
Yeah.
But I can't change the regulatory regime, unfortunately. So IBC made up of ex-bankers with a lot of years of experience. So we bring to the table a lot more experience and skills than your average credit broker who may not have any background in finance whatsoever. And unfortunately, like the old days with financial advice, there's a lot of commission chasing going on. So they'll go to who's going to pay the biggest commission rather than necessarily what's the best deal for the client. And that may be because they simply don't know how to work out which is the best deal for the client. So we try and work in a different way. We're fee-based. We charge a fee to the client for getting an offer of finance. They only pay when they get an offer of finance, and we effectively put lenders into a competitive tender to try and drive out the best pricing for the client.
Okay.
So our model's really based on two fundamental assumptions. The first is there are three types of bankers. There are some very, very good ones. There are some not so good ones, and there's quite a lot of lazy, I'm watching the clock go around till I can retire ones.
Okay.
The client has no choice or control over which one they've got, and actually they've all got one thing in common. The banks have de-staffed and de-skilled to a point now where none of them have got enough time to do the job properly.
Right.
So if it's slightly messy, if it's not a sector they know, if it's complicated, if they've just got too much work on the desk, there's 1,000,001 reasons why they'll say, no, that's not something we'd be able to do, and turn the client down. And you know what? That's not a decline by the bank.
Right.
Because an
That's
application
a can't be bothered.
Yeah, it's a can't be bothered, not a decline, because an application has never actually been submitted. So it doesn't get counted in the decline rate figures that the banks put out, where they said
that sounds like hospital waiting lists.
Yeah, they're sanctioning 8 or 9 out of 10 applications.
Yeah.
They're not counting the 900 that never get to application stage.
Yeah.
So that's the first flaw in the.
Yeah.
The second flaw is, actually, if you do find a banker that is prepared to take it forward, then the process doesn't work. And I hadn't recognised that when I was a banker. It's only when you sat the other side of the desk you start to see the flaws in it. And typically what happens is the banker comes out and has a look around and kicks the tyres, gives the client a shopping list of information. Actually, these days it's probably the banker phones up and gives the client a shopping list of information
that they require. Yeah.
The banker then writes a report, and the report goes to a credit underwriter, who makes the final decision about whether to agree the facility or not. Simple 3-step process. Every bank does it pretty much exactly the same way. Okay. Well, once they've done that initial look-see and gather information off the client then gets left out of the equation from there on in. So the banker writes a report. Well, sometimes they do. Sometimes it just goes into the too difficult pile and will sit there for ages. They might keep asking for more information, but that generally means they can't find a reason to say no yet. If they do write the report, it might be brilliant, or it might have got completely the wrong end of the stick and just be completely bonkers. And again, the client has no way to know, because it's a private internal document.
Right.
And then it lands on a credit sanctioner's desk. And I've been a credit sanctioner in 2 different banks, so I can tell you from experience, the first thing a credit sanctioner looks at is whose name's on the top, which idiot has sent this in. And depending on which grade of idiot you think they are, that will very much colour your opinion of the paper that's in front of you. It will colour the terms and conditions, the additional hoops you will add on for them to have to jump through. It might even colour the security that's required or the pricing. It might even make the difference between, if it was somebody else I'd do this, but for him, no, I can't trust him, so I'm going to decline it.
Okay.
And all that actually is nothing to do with the client.
Yeah.
It's all about the relationship between the frontline banker and credit. And it is so easy for that relationship to get on a wrong foot. You might just have had a file that's gone wrong, the credit have seen and gone, what the hell did he do that for? Or credit have asked you to do something on a file and you haven't done it, so they're calling you all sorts of everything. There's lots of reasons why that relationship can be. I could say the number of times I hear bankers say, I'm going to have to wait till Wednesday because there's a sensible credit sanctioner on Wednesday that I can talk to, which probably means the one that will get there on Tuesday they've fallen out with.
So you take all of that really.
We take all that out of the equation because we go in, we interview the client, as the banker should do, and we gather all the information, and then we actually do the frontline bank manager's job for them.
You put the report.
We will write the credit risk paper that the banker should write.
Okay.
We will then give that to the client to sanity check, to make sure we haven't missed anything important, that we haven't made any duff assumptions, that we've not promised something that the customer can't deliver or isn't happy with. So the customer sees exactly what we're saying about them before it goes to lenders. Once the client signed it off and they're happy with it, then we take it out to lenders and we tell them two really important things at that point. One, as far as they're concerned, it's a freebie. The client's paying me, I don't want any commissions off them. All I want from them is half an hour of their time to read it, and then the best terms that they can offer the client if they're interested in taking it forward. The second thing I tell them is, well, by the way, if you like it, you're not the only one that's got it. It is a competitive tender, so get your pencil sharpener out.
Yeah.
And generally it works, and it drives really good pricing. So let's give you a couple of quick examples of what I've just been talking about. A couple of Christmases ago, I got a phone call 14th, 15th of December from a bank. Can you try and help this client? I think I've led him up the garden path because I told him we'd be able to do this deal. Credit have declined it, and he's already exchanged contracts on the property.
Oops.
Yeah, so I phoned the client up, I arranged to go and see him the next day. I phoned the banker back and said, right, I'm seeing him tomorrow. Oh, great, he said. Tell you what I'll do, I'll send you my report so you've got a bit of a head start before you get there. Not sure where that sits on GDPR, but it was in the client's interest.
Yeah.
So this report came through, I read through it, and I sat there and went, this don't work. I'm not surprised it was declined by credit. I would have declined it. It just doesn't add up. Parked it, went to see the client. Within 2 or 3 minutes, it was readily apparent that the numbers in this report were completely off, where he got his numbers from. But what I went through with the client made perfect sense.
And of course, the client, as you said earlier,
the client had got no idea what was in that report.
Yeah.
So the numbers had got twisted somewhere, and it was ridiculous. It would never ever have got approved on the numbers that were in there. But actually, the numbers were fine. It was fine.
The real numbers were fine.
Yeah. So that was that one. Oh, we did get it done, and we got it done quick enough to get him to complete on time as well, which was
good,
fortunate. The second example, a client in Tamworth, manufacturing business, turning over about 8 million, bursting at the seams in the factory. They've reached that point where they've got stock of material stacked up in front of machines that they've got to move to get to the machine to work on it.
Yeah.
They were desperate to buy another freehold to expand. They'd been with their bank for 18 years, and eventually they found a freehold site that was in the right location, the right area. They went along to the bank and said, right, here you go, it's £975,000. What can you do to help us with that? I saw the response from the bank. A bit disappointing that after an 18-year relationship it was less than half a page. And it amounted to, I don't think it's worth 975,000 quid. Bit of an odd comment to make.
Yeah.
And you can't afford it.
Right.
That was it.
Okay.
So I was introduced by their IFA. I went in and had a chat. I just go in and have a chat, and I listen and I look and digest what's going on. And asked the questions I pretty much knew the answer to because I'd had a read through the accounts, and particularly the notes to the accounts before I got there. So the first question was, who owns this building? Who owns the one we're sat in now? Oh yeah, our pension fund owns this. Okay, so what's this worth then? About £1 million. Great, okay. And the rent? Oh, just under 100,000 a year. Excellent. And is there any borrowing on it? No, there's no borrowing on this factory at all. In fact, the pension fund owes the company about 200,000. Great. Okay. So from there, it took me about 30 seconds to come up with a structure that worked.
Yeah.
So I said, right, what we'll do then is we'll do a £600,000 mortgage on this.
Yeah.
There were other assets in the pension fund, so I wasn't breaking the 50% rule. We do a £600,000 mortgage on this. That can be paid for out of the rent you're already paying. So there's a zero cost to the business of borrowing that 600,000. 200,000 can be used to repay the company what's owed. So the company's now got 200 grand deposit.
Mm-hmm.
Good start.
Yeah.
Pension fund's sitting on 400 grand in cash. So the pension, let's say in round numbers with costs, the new building's £1 million. Pension fund's got 400 grand, so they can buy 40% of the new building. The company's got 200 grand in cash, so that's 600 grand. They only needed to borrow 375,000 plus a bit for costs, which they got. So the company only needed 375 grand, not 975 grand to complete, which they could afford. So I wrote it all up. The clients approved the report. I sent it out to loads of different lenders, including the incumbent who'd already turned it down because they couldn't afford it. And literally within 2 minutes of hitting send, I got an email back. I've already looked at this, they can't afford it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's a different proposition.
Open it first.
Try reading it.
Yeah.
2 days later he came back with, well, I suppose if they did it that way they might be able to afford it. And then he put some terms out that A, weren't very exciting, and B, would have been illegal to comply with, because he wanted them to reduce the rent on the existing factory by 50% for the first 2 years. I go, bit of a problem there, because it's HMRC rules, has to be on a Red Book open market value. You can't just decide to halve the rent.
Yeah.
So we parked him as being an idiot. I'd got 4 other banks absolutely fighting themselves over it, and we'd reached the point where we were talking about the fine detail on the invoice finance facility, when completely out of the blue, no phone call, no email, just an Outlook meeting request went bing into my inbox, which I thought was a little odd. So I phoned the client up and I said, what's all this about? He said, I've had them on the phone, I've agreed I'll talk to them. I said, there's no point you coming because I'm only going to tell them to get lost. I said, don't be hasty, let's see what they've got to say.
This is the original.
This is the original bank.
Yeah.
So I trogged over to Tamworth, they came in, the account manager, his area director, they sat down and the first thing they said was, yeah, we've cocked this up, haven't we? Yep. Great. We'll take all the conditions off. Okay, that's a good start. Can we requote on the pricing? Guys, you can do what you want. So they then put some prices on the table, which if I say was suicidal, I wouldn't be far wrong. The bank would be losing money on the pricing that they offered. And the client was getting quite excited at that point, so I gave him a bit of a kick under the table. And that's better. But the invoice finance is still far, far too expensive. Oh, right, he said, well, actually, I've already told them that they need to cut the prices on that as well. I said, great. And then the next bit of the conversation, I still don't believe to this day, he then leaned forward and said, and if when they've cut it, it's not enough, tell me and I'll make them cut some more off. What? Which school of negotiations did you go to?
Correct.
So guess what?
Yeah.
It wasn't enough.
Right. Very good.
25 grand a year out of the cost of the invoice finance facility.
Brilliant.
So by having that competitive tender process and making it easy for the existing lender to see how to structure it and to do it, they got a fantastic deal. Much better than they would have got. Well, they got a decline anyway. So, but much better than the deal they would have had if they just stuck with the original lender in the first place. And actually, between what they cut the lending to and what they saved on the invoice finance facility, the 375 grand loan wasn't costing them a great deal. Yeah. In real terms. Yeah. So fantastic result for the client. I'm pretty sure the bank's still losing money on that now. But from their perspective, banks are driven by a bizarre process. They have to grow their income year on year. So if they lose a client, they've got to fill that hole before they can start growing their book. So actually to lose that income from that client would have been very painful.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't lose the income. They got it cut back on the invoice finance side, but they didn't lose it. So actually, by retaining the client, even though it was going to lose money on the deal, they increased their income.
Mm.
So
Bizarre, isn't it,
for
really?
that manager, it was a win,
Yeah.
but for the organisation, it was a loss.
Yeah.
But that's the strange sort of things that happens in banks.
Not a lesson for how, as business owners, we should run our own business.
Absolutely not. What's the point in selling something for £1 that costs you £1.50?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you just wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
You might sell something for 50p that costs you 25p, but you wouldn't sell it at 50p if it was costing you 60.
Yeah.
You wouldn't last very long.
So fascinating insight there. So what got you into this line of work in the first place?
Oh, now you're asking me.
So how far do we go back?
Well, when I was at school, I wanted to join the RAF, but my eyesight wasn't good enough, and the careers advice was accountancy or banking. Or sweeping the streets, I seem to remember. was the opinion of the biology teacher, but that's another story. Yeah. Banking was safe, and it was a job for life, and it had a decent pension, so why not? And actually, for the most part, I quite enjoyed it.
So you went into banking straight from
school. Yeah, left school in May, had 3 or 4 weeks off, and then started work at the beginning of July 1979 in glorious Brierley Hill.
Right.
Which was great fun. So I stuck banking for 31 years, but by that point it had changed beyond recognition.
Okay, so 31 years of experience within the banking
on that
world.
side of the counter. And banking really had become a thankless task. We'd had the banking crisis. Bankers' reputations was less than politicians and reporters. It wasn't a nice environment to be in. I spent the last 2.5 years of my career in banking shouting at people that I wanted the money back because it was all on really ropey property deals that had gone horribly wrong during the crash. You can't keep doing that day after day. It's soul destroying.
Right.
Come the end of 2010, I reached the level where I could stand it no longer and managed to negotiate an exit.
Okay. So then what led you to the Independent Banking Consultancy?
Complete fluke. I spoke to a lawyer friend and said, I've told the bank to stick it. I'm leaving on the 31st of January, no idea what I'm going to do next.
Okay.
And he said, I met these guys last week, have a chat with them. And that was it.
Gosh, so you didn't do months and months of research first?
No.
Right, okay.
In fact, I'd thrown my toys out the pram on the 14th of December. They actually told me there wasn't any money available, and if I wanted to leave, I could resign at close of play on the 14th of December. I presented a couple of arguments, and they agreed to what I wanted on the 15th, and I left on the 31st of December. So that week between Christmas and New Year, I spent quite a lot of time on the phone with independent banking consultants. Went down to see them early in January, had a couple of meetings with them, decided I liked what I was seeing, and by the time all the paperwork was done, I joined them at the beginning of April.
Okay.
And I've thoroughly enjoyed life since then.
So I suspect quite a lot of us, when we decided that we were going to leave what we were doing, if that's the way we got into business, we might have toyed with the idea of taking on a franchise or maybe starting completely afresh on our own. So obviously you had the card in your hand, so you kind of were almost started down that process. But what made you decide to go down the franchise route versus maybe doing something on your own to start with?
Well, I'm the typical small business startup. What am I actually going to do? I'm going to do what I know.
Yeah.
Most of us did that.
Yeah.
So the question was exactly that. Do I join an established business and pay them a fee to piggyback off what they've got?
Mm-hmm.
Or do I start from scratch? And I did the calculation that actually what they wanted for the franchise fee, the upfront payment, was probably less than it would have been for me to get a website built, to get all my stationery and processes and everything else sorted, and a head start, because I didn't have to sit down and spend months working out how to actually do things. It was already, they got the processes, they got the procedures, they got the documentation, they got the website, they got the advertising material. They were able to feed me some leads. So I probably got a 10-month head start, 12-month head start by joining them over going on my own.
So you calculated the cost of those 11-12 months.
Absolutely. And I've been very happy with the way it's gone.
Were there competitors to IBC that you looked at, or?
There were. I didn't look at them in any great depth because I'd come across most of them before, and they came back to what I talked about right at the beginning, the broker model, chasing commissions.
Right.
And I didn't want to be involved in that. It just didn't sit right in my gut. I liked IBC's model of being independent, being fee driven and acting for the client. I think that's the one single crucial thing for us, is we are acting for the client, not beholden to the lender. We have to act in good faith with the lenders, there's no doubt about that, but our primary responsibility is to our client, not to the lender, and that is a huge difference. I do know somebody that went to a recruitment day seminar with one of the what was at the time a very well-known franchise brokerage, and there was not one person in the room with any banking experience. Really, that's not how you're going to add value to a client's proposition. So once I'd seen IBC, seen what they did, seen how they did it, I wasn't going anywhere else.
And is the model typical of a franchise where there was an upfront fee, and then is there an ongoing management fee?
There's an ongoing monthly fee, which is based on your turnover. With there's a minimum amount you pay each month, and then you go above the minimum, above the threshold, that you do a top up payment on that. Which is very, it's typical of most franchises. And well within the lower end of the range of rates that I've seen on different franchise models.
And what sort of support do they provide ongoing for you?
They provide the website. They're always updating procedures and documents. When I got my FCA authorisation, the amount of work they put in to doing theirs, which then I piggybacked off. So they provided literally 90% of the paperwork that I had to submit for mine. And it just changed from their name to mine on the top, just the odd tweak here and there. So massive help in getting the FCA authorisation. They got me full membership of the NAC, the National Association of Commercial Finance Brokers, from day one, rather than having to wait 2 years to get accepted. We do get leads come through the website occasionally, not that often. The website, like a lot of professional services, is more of a validation site than a lead generating site. People go to that to look at testimonials and to get some more information on the organisation rather than using it as a lead generator. They do quarterly newsletters that always generate new inquiries. So they do lots of that sort of stuff. We're a little bit slow because we're bankers, so they've just started doing blogs and things like that, which, I'm a dinosaur, they're above my head.
All right, so lots of admin, regulatory and some marketing support on it.
Absolutely.
And
the policy and procedures, because things are always changing. I mean, GDPR was a massive change. Making tax digital, we got together 4 of us and thrashed out actually where did we sit on that, because the bulk of what we do is not vatable, but a little bit is, and it's one of these where you have to do a manual calculation each quarter that the software won't cope with. So we sat down as a group and worked out how to deal with that. So that took that headache away.
Okay.
They've got group discount commission arrangements on various things like foreign exchange and insurances and stuff like that.
Okay, so the power of it's a fair bit then of effectively the power of the group that you've got now coming together. It means that the sum of the parts is greater than some of the individuals, or whatever the right expression is.
And we're getting very close to a deal with a pension fund that will effectively we'll be able to underwrite our own deals.
Right. Okay.
Which they'll provide the funding, and effectively we will underwrite them ourselves.
Yeah.
Which put us in a
very different.
That would be a game changer.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you wouldn't have got that as an individual. No. It's only because there's a number of us all banded together within the franchise model that could work.
And is it a geographical based franchise? Okay.
Yeah. So I've got the franchise for Worcestershire and the Midlands till somebody else comes along and wants the Midlands.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Which is fine.
Yeah. And are there is the franchise arrangement reviewed every so many years?
Every 5 years. So I'm on my second
term, if you like. Second. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because you said 2011. You said you started.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I did put a break clause in at 3 years on the second one, because I'm getting to that age where I go, do I want to stop or not?
Do you have to, at that renewal, did you have to pay another lump sum?
No.
Or is that, okay. But they had the right, presumably, to say, Ian, you're not performing to the level we wanted.
Go away.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
And then when you, one of the questions I think a lot of people have with franchise is potentially around, if I've created a business, is it mine to sell at some point? When I decide to stop. So how would that work?
The franchise agreement covers that explicitly. You have to give IBC first option to buy it back.
Okay.
If they don't want to buy it, as long as the person you are selling it to meets the criteria that's set out in the franchise agreement, that's fine. You pay a fee to IBC for the transfer of the license, as you would with any other franchisee.
Right.
And obviously the new person coming in would have to go through the same vetting and training that I did at the outset.
And is there when you say they got first right of refusal, is there a set valuation calculation that they've put together?
Is, but I couldn't for life tell you what it sounds like.
Yeah.
This is a conversation we were having at ScaleUp Club the last time. Have you got a business or have you got a job?
Yeah.
And although I started out, bear in mind I was 51 when I started. At that point I thought I wanted to grow a business and was going to have half a dozen people working for me.
Yeah.
And actually by the time I got to 55 and past that, actually I just couldn't be bothered with the hassle of having other people to, especially with the regulatory bit. Once the FCA authorisation came in, you've got to be doing monitoring interviews. Go away, it's too much like hard work.
Okay.
So I made the conscious decision after I got my FCA authorisation that, you know what, actually this will provide me with a secure income for as long as I want to carry on doing it, and that's fine by me. And if at the end, when I come to stop, the business is worth nothing, I'll have had a good income out of it while I was running, and that's fine.
Okay.
I've got a decent pension sorted out, so yeah.
So you've worked it that way.
But it was a conscious decision to do that. I do know that I have got a decent pension in the background.
Yeah.
I'm not expecting to sell my business to provide my pension.
Yeah.
Which unfortunately a lot of businesses get into that they think the business is going to be their pension. but actually they've got a job rather than a business. They haven't got a business they can sell.
And I think that's a really good lesson, isn't it? From not just whether you're going to sell it at the end and whether you've got a business that's sellable, but also that decision process, because we talk about this scale-up journey and we talk about the staging posts.
And actually I reached the first staging post and said, no, that's fine. I like where I am. I'm comfortable where I am, and this suits my needs. So I'm not going to put the time, effort and grief into growing. I'll stick with what I've got. Thank you very much.
No, very good. So some of the milestones then that you came with, obviously you've just mentioned one which was at the five-year point, so you got a milestone every 5 years where you've got to achieve something. 56 we did the renewal. I'm 59 this year. I've got another 2 years till that break clause comes in. Will I exercise it? Nah, probably not. Actually, I've got the timing slightly wrong, because I said this is my second. It isn't technically, it's my third, because 2 years in I took an extra territory, so that started the new 5-year running at that point. So it was 7 years before the first renewal rather than 5. Okay.
I'd forgotten about that. I was sitting there just in my head while we were talking, going, no, the maths doesn't add up. How did I start at 51 and after? Because effectively the first one was 7 years, because I took the extra territory after 2. I got a renewal in 2021, but I'll roll it over again, I'm sure. I'm still enjoying life. I'd be bored if I stopped.
So has the mix of clients changed much over the time?
It's one of those strange entities where, although they're all business and broadly SME, they are totally different, and it can be all sorts of everything. The only common denominator is they have a need for money, or they have a problem with their lender. So I've done everything from solicitor's practice, private school, manufacturing, quite a lot of property investment, property development, wholesale, retail, the whole kit and caboodle. Medical, done a dentist, done a doctor's.
Right. So you've worked with a lot of businesses, both from that point of view, and I know you also do some work with the county council around supporting businesses that are scaling up and are growing. So what sort of lessons would you give to business owners that are looking to scale up their business?
Every business is unique. Every business has its own particular issues and problems. But when you stick the business owners in a room together and they're prepared to talk to each other, actually those problems and issues are broadly the same across nearly every business. So actually get out from behind your desk, where it's actually a lonely place with a lot of pressure on your head, particularly in that up to 10, 30 employees, where there typically is one owner and you're carrying the whole burden. And go and mix with other business owners and start to share some experience and knowledge, whether that's at the ScaleUp Club or through the smart boards that you run or the boot camps. Get out there and talk to other business owners, because actually you'll find when you get 5 or 6 business owners around a table and they start to open up, they do have the common threads are there, that they aren't quite as unique as they think they are, and you can learn a lot from just bouncing issues and problems across the table with each other.
Good. Definitely great advice, certainly. Good. And with your experience of taking on a franchise, then maybe for those people thinking about getting the most out of, maybe whether to take a franchise or not, but also getting the most out of their franchise arrangement, any lessons that you've learned along the way?
I think you need to be clear at the outset what you're going into and what you expect to get out of it. And it's like most things in life, the more you put in, the more you'll get back. So you've actually, engage with the franchise owner. Don't just sit there and expect them to spoon feed you, because guess what, they won't.
Okay.
Most franchises are around providing a backbone of support, but they're not going to come and open the door and clean the windows for you. You've got to still be prepared to roll your sleeves up and get on with it. I've just actually done a finance application for a client to buy a Subway franchise.
Okay.
And that was particularly interesting, looking at the dynamics of a franchise in a totally different environment to what I've been involved in, and seeing how it works on where you have to make a marketing contribution in addition to the percentage of turnover. And of course you have to buy all the supplies through them. So actually looking at the breakdown of how it works, that was an interesting experience, and I had lengthy conversations with the client about, we ended up looking at probably 5 or 6 different outlets before he actually found the right one that was the right fit for him.
Okay.
And a lot of it boiled down to actually me doing the sums on what it was going to cost him to repay the loan each month. I was saying, well, based on that performance, there's going to be the square root of nothing left for you by the time you've paid the loan. Because don't forget, your lease expires in 7 years' time. Well, actually, the first one we looked at, the lease had expired. Well, nobody's going to lend you the money on that till there's a new lease in place. So actually, you've got to go back to the vendor and tell them to go and get a new lease. You just want to do that? Well, great.
Yeah.
You ain't got a business you can sell then, because why would anybody buy a business that the landlord could turn around tomorrow and say, here's a month's notice, clear off?
Yeah.
If you're going to borrow the money over 10 years, the lease has got to be at least 10 years long.
Okay, good.
So, bonkers situation. And actually, with that one, who do you have to buy all your supplies to them, or can you buy elsewhere? When is the refit of the shop due? Because under their standards, you have to have a refit every so many years. What's that going to cost? Have you budgeted for that? When's the lease going to expire? Is the rent likely to go up? Is that? So there are lots of things you've got to look at and make sure you understand all the moving parts.
Okay, very good.
It's the same with anything in life, isn't it? Before you sign on the dotted line, make sure you understand exactly what you're signing, and if in doubt, get some professional advice.
And I guess so.
There's a lot of amateurs out there that cost people a lot of money because they don't actually know what they're talking about.
What's that expression? If you think hiring an amateur is expensive,
say hiring a professional is expensive, try hiring an amateur.
I'll get it the right way around eventually. Good. All right, and I guess that might be you might answer the question in that way, but if a business owner is thinking about the fact they may need to get some finance into the business, what advice would you give them?
Again, it comes back to the same thing. Have you actually thought through what it is you're going to do? Have you considered all the potential impacts, the what ifs? What if you go and spend £100,000 on this machine and then there's no market for what you want to produce? Because actually the lenders want to know all those things. They want to know that you've thought it through. And actually getting that information down in language that lenders will understand is what I do. It probably isn't 100% grammatically correct. I had to have 2 goes at my O-level English. I put my hand up to that. My handwriting is atrocious, is probably the best description of it. But it's about putting it in language and terms that the person reading it will understand. It's about demonstrating that you have thought through all the potential impacts. So you've identified that you've used your Ansoff matrix or whatever to identify That's the target market. That's the biggest market and the easiest to attack, and the one I'm best suited to. So down there. So what is it going to actually cost me to do that? Why, if it takes longer to get the payback? You've got to think through all those sort of things. So actually, you do need to get some cash flow forecasts done. And am I the right person to do cash flow forecasts? Probably not. That's an accountant's job. So spend some time with an accountant. Get your forecasts right. Stress test them. Test the what ifs. Because I'm going to stress test them when they come to me. And if I really hate and loathe sets of forecasts that do the Del Trotter hockey stick.
Oh yes,
we start off down here, we'll be millionaire by the end of next year. Right, and in reality, it's not going to happen. So be realistic in your forecasting. In fact, possibly be pessimistic in your forecasting. And if it works on a pessimistic basis, then actually you've probably got something reasonable to go for. But don't expect the impossible. Banks aren't there to throw speculative money around, and we don't want them to throw speculative. That's how the world got into a horrible messy place in 2007, 2008. It's my money and your money that they're throwing around. It's not the bank's money. So we do actually want them to be reasonably cautious. We do want them to be sensible about what they're lending. So risk capital, if it's a new invention, if it's a new idea, if it's an untested market, that needs risk equity, not bank debt for that piece. Banks should be there to oil the wheels, to provide the working capital, to provide finance for long-term pieces of kit or property, not for a speculative new product development. That's not where banks place in the marketplace is.
Great, brilliant. Thank you very much, Ian. So if people would like to get hold of you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Either email at ip@independentbankers.co.uk or through the website independentbankers.co.uk.
Okay, so Ian, thank you very much for your time on ScaleUp Radio today.
Pleasure, thank you.
Don't forget to take a look at www.bizsmarts.co.uk to access a great range of resources to help you in your scale-up journey. So that's bizsmarts.co.uk, which is bizsmarts.co.uk.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.